played it at home. I'll just start it again, if that's okay. I'll just start from the beginning again. That'll be fine. Oh, yeah, I'm just doing practice. Yeah, it's getting automatic. Yeah, that would be great. Should we go out? Yeah, I think I've got this passage. Well, I think we've all had that experience at some point. We've practiced for ages. It goes perfectly. We can do it perfectly well at home. It's all going well. We suddenly turn up at the concert or at our teacher's house for the lesson or wherever it is, playing for friends, and it all goes wrong. And we can't imagine why it is, because we spent so much time practicing it. I'm going to tell you about the scariest moment I ever had in 35, 40 years of giving piano recitals, piano concerts. And what it was I was playing the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto. You know the one. Very famous. And I played it many, many times. I was sort of in my late 20s, I think, and I played it around and about, and I played it as a student. I knew it really well, but I hadn't played it for maybe 8 months at this time. So I went back to the score and ran through it, and it was all there, absolutely fine. And I practiced, I spent some time with it, just kind of going around all the bits. But because I knew it really well, and it was somewhere in the system, it was all happening perfectly well, no problem. Now, in England, we often only have a rehearsal on the day of the concert with the orchestra. So as usual, I just popped in the afternoon, sat down at the rehearsal, all fine, but I felt very, very nervous. And I just couldn't work out why, because I knew this piece very well. Come the evening, I walked out, I sat down, I started playing, and I got this amazing feeling of dislocation. What I mean by that is that I was watching myself play the piano, but I wasn't in charge of the piece. In fact, in many ways, the piece was playing me rather than me playing the piece. And I suddenly realized that what had happened was I hadn't relearned that piece, re-engaged the part of my mind that said, play this note, play this note, play this note. And I was playing by rote, or by muscle memory, if you want to call it that. And essentially, we don't have, obviously, muscle memory. Muscle memory is a kind of practice, almost like we set up a program, started it, and let it run. And I realized in this performance that if I started thinking about playing Rachmaninoff 2 and the next note that would come up, I'd be completely lost. I would lose track of everything I was doing because I had no idea what was happening next. For the next 35 minutes on stage, in front of 500 people, I sat there trying to think of anything I could apart from playing the piano. I tried to remember poetry I knew, I sang songs to myself inside my head, and my hands just kept going because they knew how to keep going. But I also knew that if I tried to do anything to break into that program at all, it was all going to collapse around me. I was incredibly lucky and terrified, and I managed to finish that concerto actually pretty well. But that audience didn't get Rachmaninoff Concerto No. 2 played by Karl Lutchmayer that night. They got Karl Lutchmayer played by Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, because I didn't craft that performance. I didn't engage with it. I didn't communicate anything. My system, my programming played all the notes in a row, and I never wanted to be there again. And this is the problem with rote learning. In a difficult passage, we often repeat it many, many, many times. We go, oh, we've got to work out our fingering, we've got to work out our physical technique around it. And by the time we've learned it, we've done it so many times, we've stopped thinking about it. And one of the big problems with that is that that's fine if we can absolutely replicate our practice situation in another arena. So what I did for that performance of Rachmaninoff 2 is pretended I was at home thinking about other things and just watching my hands do the journey. But as soon as you break that program, so that might be a different piano, that might be 500 people in the audience and the light shining and the conductor standing there and the orchestra standing behind you. It might be so many other things. It might be, oh, can you go back and do that bar again? Oh, no, I can't. I'm not even reading the music at this point. And that breaking of the program, which is going to happen frequently in any performance, which isn't just where we've ended up in our comfortable place with our cup of tea and our mobile phone, is going to get destroyed and our program is going to fall apart. And that is why rote learning is incredibly dangerous to us, because it doesn't stand up literally under the spotlight. Okay, so what are the kinds of things we can do to actually break that program, do really good learning, and make sure that when we are playing the piano, or whichever instrument you play, that you are really making the music at the moment that sound happens, rather than just running a program and observing it. Okay, let's think about that. So I think one of the most important things we can do is remember that we don't want a state where we're very calm and distant from our performance and our music. We want to be hyper vigilant whilst playing. We want our mind to race, to think much faster than we usually do, and to be in control of all of the minutiae of our performance. I know when my mind is really fast and running, I can do anything because it's running faster than my fingers, and I can just take one note and make it slightly louder or slightly softer. And that's when I feel I have real control over my performance and my music. So what does that require? Well, that requires me to be fully present when I'm practicing, to be very aware of as much as I possibly can. And we have lots of techniques to really, really make sure that we are being really focused and mindful in our practice. Because it is worth remembering that when we talk about muscle memory, when we talk about technique, it is ultimately our brain that sends the signals in the right order to our hands. And so if our brain can just say, oh, hold on, I'm just going to shape that phrase differently in the spur of the moment, we're then making really great music. And that's very important. What can we do to break up that programming so we're really alert? One way is to practice quite slowly, but very mindfully. So if I take the passage we started with at the beginning with the Chopin barcarolle, if I were to take quite a long time over every note, almost like doing a martial art or Tai Chi, I'm having to focus so much on every note that my brain is thinking, what's coming next? What's coming next? And gradually, if I do it slowly, actually, my brain will be very aware of what's happening next. Actually, Rachmaninoff used to do this all the time. And people used to go to his house and hear him practice in his garden studio and go, what on earth is he doing? Because he would take 3 seconds on each note. Imagine how slow that is. And be super aware of everything he was doing. And he was an extraordinary pianist, as we know, breaking the program. Of course, that can't be our only practice. We have to also be able to play it fast. But we've turned around the norm of what we're doing in our mind. We're breaking the program. We're looking at the music in other ways. Okay, what else can we do? Well, we can certainly, and particularly if you're playing from memory, learn your left hand by memory. And so that way you have something to anchor it on, and you can sit there playing your left hand all by itself. Even if you're not playing from memory, it's incredibly useful to really sit there just with your left hand. Sometimes you find a few things that you hadn't realized it was doing, but in doing that, again, you've somehow managed to break up how we understand the piece. And in that sense, it's about getting a 360-degree view of what you're actually doing. Because at this jacket. You can see it 4,500 miles away. I'm in Oxford and you're in India at the moment. And it looks, I hope, fine. It looks rather lovely here. It's a blue velvet jacket. Okay, fine. But you haven't seen the back of it. You don't know how it works. You don't know how the pockets are. If you wanted to recreate this jacket, that would be very, very difficult. Of course, a tailor coming to recreate this jacket would spread it out, would look at the seams, would look at the lining, would turn it inside out and upside down and goodness knows what. But by the end of it, he would then create a jacket that looked like this, but that would be the last stage in the process. The taking apart of things, the understanding of things is going to be very, very important for us really creating good performances. The next thing we can do to break up the programming, to accelerate the mind, is get used to starting from lots of different places, ideally starting from anywhere in the score. So I might start here, or a bit later, or a bit later than that, etc. I often find students who can only really start from the top of the page or even from the beginning of the piece. That's no use. It's really useful, actually, just in case you do slip up, to be able to start from any phrase, for instance, any 4-bar phrase or any, however the music works. So do get used to not starting your practice at the beginning of the piece, dividing your piece up into lots and lots of small 4 or 8-bar sections and being able to start from any of those. Ideally, if you really want to know your piece as well and be totally comfortable and breathe out and be very alive on the concert platform, be able to start from anywhere. Because after all, if you were reading a book, you wouldn't have a problem starting from any word, would you? It might not make as much sense as starting at the beginning of a sentence, but you would certainly be able to do that. And music should be just as normal and as natural as that. Another thing that's quite useful, it's a bit weird, but we do it as professionals, and you might as well try it, is taking some melodies and playing them with one finger. Why? Because then you really know how that melody goes, because you're not just using your muscle memory to go, oh, I know where the hand goes. Because again, if you suddenly look down and go, how does the tune go? If you can play it with one finger, you know how that tune goes. You can play it with the wrong fingers that day, and that's pretty handy. It's why ear training can be really, really useful for pianists. We don't have to worry about playing in tune, obviously. Well, not so much. But if we've got good ears and we can play by ear, we can improvise, then we know how those melodies go. And then we're actually making the music at the moment of performance. And that's really key. I think there are 2 other really key things to owning your performance and not playing by rote. The first is every time you're about to do a thing again, another repetition, ask yourself, what exactly am I aiming to do this time? What am I trying to improve? What am I trying to take to the next level? Is it this note? Is it that passage? Is it the crescendo or decrescendo? In that way, you're actually doing, you're thinking, you're focusing, you're mindful, and you're alive. And that's really, really important. The other thing, particularly if you're memorizing music, but even if you're not, play as much as possible from the music. By all means, practice your memory and learn to play from memory. And when you're playing from memory, practice playing from memory. But memory isn't eternal. And well, most people's memories aren't eternal, mine certainly isn't. And I need to refresh it. And actually, the best thing to do is sit and actually play. And really see what the score and therefore the composer is telling you. Take it in, take it through your eyes, take it through your mind, take it through your ears. And this again gives us a 360-degree view of the music, and that's incredibly important. Now, I have one final secret practicing technique, but for that, we have to go to a different room. Well, hello there, and welcome to my library. This is a place of quiet. There's no instrument here. It's quite a small library, as you can see. And this is where I get my hardest work done. Here's my score. and I will sit and study it. And I don't mean I will look at the print. Of course, I do look at the print. I look out for things I haven't noticed while playing. But I also play through this music in my head. Firstly, with the score, and I will sit here and imagine my fingers playing every note and every chord. It's quite a discipline to do that. And then, when I'm really sure I know this music, I'll shut the score, shut my eyes, and play that passage again, maybe 2 or 3 times in my head, maybe even more. See, if I can play that passage in my head without an instrument, without the sound, without moving my fingers and muscle memory, then I really know that passage. And then I can just recreate it at the piano very easily, because when I create that performance in my head without moving my hands, it's the same as practicing, except that when I come to the piano, I will move my hands. And the other great thing about practicing in this way is that I don't get beguiled by the sound of the instrument. As you saw, I have a lovely Steinway next door. Sometimes one just enjoys playing the instrument, the sound, one feels heroic or sad or whatever. Here I can work calmly, purely, simply, without all of that tamasha, if you like, with all of that performance and sound and so on, and really focus how I think about the music and how I learn the music and how well I know the music. So if you can spend some of your time studying your music without the instrument, sitting there, going through it, audiating it, hearing it in your head, then you really will begin to have a full sense of this music. You will play more musically, far better, possibly even more creatively, but you will have broken that problem of, well, it went okay at home. So this is how professionals practice, and this is how we try to give ourselves the best possible chance of playing well in performance situations. Many of these techniques are things that you can certainly try at home, so that whether it's performance or exam or just general nerves, you can overcome those so that when you are sitting at that instrument, the performance that you are giving is yours and you own that music as if though you were the composer rather than it owning you. So throw out rote learning and make sure it's always better at concert than it ever was at home.